All right, so this is what I want to share with you all today. I actually have a confession to make. But before I make that confession, I need you all to share a little bit of information with me. By a show of hands, who in here has had at least a little bit of dissatisfaction in their career? Oh, yes, perfect, wonderful. So, by another show of hands, who has had at least a moderate amount of dissatisfaction in their work career? And before you answer, I promise not to tell your boss. Who's had that? Yes. So some people just a little bit, or a lot of people just a little bit, and some people just a little bit more. And I won't even ask you how many of you have had complete job dissatisfaction inside of your career. Yes, didn't even ask it. It's already up here. So we're going to talk about some tools and tips on how to get over that. But before we do, I want to go ahead and share with you what my confession is. My confession is that I actually have a huge amount of job dissatisfaction, right? So huge, in fact, that I think I actually hate my job. I absolutely hate it. Well, I guess I'm going to take that back because I don't hate it anymore because I actually quit the job that I hate. Right? So this used to be me. How many of you all can relate to that particular set of photos? Yeah, I see somebody point and say, no, that's me right there in the center. Right? So I want to backtrack just a little bit so that I can tell you all a little bit of information about myself. So it all started way back when I was searching for my first job, my first career, and I landed on the role and the position of teacher. So as I landed on that position of teacher, I went into that first interview and I got that job right after the first time. So I was elated. How many people can actually say that they get a job on their first try? Awesome, so we're on the same team, right? So as I went through that, I started to fall in love with teaching. As I received my assignment to be a reading and English teacher, I started doing all kinds of things with my students that got them recognition inside of the community, and I eventually ended up becoming Teacher of the Year, and I even got a free education out of it. I received my master's degree from the University of Texas in education, and it was paid for by the University of Texas and the district. How much more sweet can workplace happiness get? But that bliss soon started to tumble down right after I stepped into the role of assistant principal. Who knew that in a place of leadership, I could experience so much workplace dissatisfaction? So when this blissful time came tumbling down, I ran into somebody that I like to coin as a work hag. A work hag is a maliciously vicious colleague whose primary goal is to void the workplace of positive human interaction and use their venomous nature to poison the climate and culture of work communities. Wow, I made that up because that's exactly what I experienced. However, I know it might sound a little bit harsh and a little bit negative, but please take the time to hear me out. Now, when I experienced this workplace hag, certain things started to happen to me, like being called on my phone incessantly 11 times in a row inside of my office where I was conducting a private meeting, even though I told my work hag that I was unavailable. She then went on to belittle me in front of my peers and in front of the students. And finally, it ended with her actually trying to discredit me in front of my principal. My boss. I mean, who does that? Clearly, she does. But one of the things that I found out was that I had a certain level of what I perceived to be as weakness. So I would have my confidence to decrease bit by bit. And each day as I had to walk into the workplace, I thought about how much I did not want to be there. And I figured that that dissatisfaction just wasn't worth the actual sacrifice. So I would go through the motions each day, and this may resonate with some of you. I would wake up in the morning, pull myself out of bed, think about why I had to go to work because I needed to make money, pulled myself up, got into the car, drove in traffic, got ready to get the harassment that I knew I was going to receive for the day, and took my verbal beating, then cried about that verbal beating, went home at the end of the day, and crawled back into bed, being fearful of what I would have to face again the following day. So because I knew that this was not the way work life was supposed to feel, I realized that this type of dissatisfaction was not worth the sacrifice. And I eventually transferred, and after transferring away from my work hag, I eventually found myself in a similar situation. Though it wasn't as intense, I decided that I just couldn't deal anymore, and I quit. So, quitting your job, according to parents, is not necessarily the best method of action. So for many of us who have parents who've been working in jobs for 30 plus years, you just don't quit. And one of the things that you might hear from them is that, oh, it'll be okay, things will get better. Or, isn't there another position available within your company? Why don't you just try to apply for another position? And some of my favorites, oh, you should just create a thick skin. You know, it's tough inside of the workplace. You should just try to brush it off and move on. And also, I heard my mom vividly say, never let them see you sweat. And I hated that phrase because what does that even mean? Never let them see you sweat. Because sometimes we actually have to let it out. We have to cry. But I knew that coming from my parents who've been inside of their careers for 20 and 30 and 35 years, they weren't going to talk about their bosses at work. They were going to come home, they were going to complain about it to their significant other, their spouse, and then they were going to go back to work only to fight that battle once again. However, I think we've moved past this time, especially for me. I knew that that advice couldn't work for me inside of my workplace situation. So I decided to do a little bit of my own research on workplace dissatisfaction. So some of the research that has been conducted by places like Gallup, Forbes, USA Today, and even the Huffington Post all concur that over 70% of people hate some aspect of their job. And as the hands have gone up today, we see that to be the truth. Now, this hatred stems from a range of indicators, and those indicators include the commute to work, the level of autonomy that you might have inside of the workplace, and it might also include you being able to take the reins of your particular position and do what's necessary for your role. But it also includes those relationships that we have with our bosses and with our coworkers. And because these triggers help employees to discover a certain level of satisfaction, it also determines how well we are going to assimilate to that particular work environment. So because these indicators are fluid across most particular organizations and companies, and these indicators are something that we can connect with across most jobs, what we come to understand is what our parents say is not necessarily true. Sometimes it just doesn't get better. Sometimes we have to stay the course. But when we consider these findings, what we must ask ourselves as employees is, how much am I willing to put up with? How much am I willing to brush aside so that I can find a workplace that fits. Now, a recent workplace bullying survey conducted by the Workplace Bullying Institute says that 72% of employers denied or defended workplace bullying. And 27% of employees have current or past direct experience with abusive conduct at work. And because this is over a fourth of the workplace community, I can't help but to imagine the level of obscurity these people must feel while lying inside of this particular role. But shockingly enough, 89% of female targets lose their jobs when they are the subjects of the bullying, while only 11% of female perpetrators suffer job loss when the bullying is against another woman. Conversely, women suffer a 30% job loss when that same bullying is against another male. So males, please feel assured that your job is safe if you end up being bullied by a woman. Now, that also supports the research that we have to do and the work that we have to do to talk about gender equity across jobs, but that's another talk. All right, so similar to my work hag, this bullying is something that we have to start to try to figure out how to eradicate inside of the workplace. And the Workplace Bullying Institute defines it as abusive conduct based on threatening humiliation or intimidation, work sabotage, or verbal abuse. But despite all of these statistics, there is a ray of hope. And that ray of hope means that rules have changed and shifted since the times when our parents gave us that information on how to handle workplace bullying. So before transferring, I want to update you all. Before I transferred from that job, I actually went to my supervisors and I let them know that this was going on. And through that experience, I realized that we have to turn our process into our promise. And that's actually me inside of my promise right there. So sometimes the things that we go through are the process that has to take place in order for us to feel purpose inside of our jobs. Now, this process helped me to eradicate bullying on the job where I served as an assistant principal, and being able to help others who were experiencing that same situation. And that process led me to create a team that was no longer dysfunctional, but a team that could work together and rally together in order to create something great for the school, which ended up landing us in the top 10 as far as our state testing scores were concerned. And through that, I found my purpose of being able to be a success coach outside of the workplace. So what am I trying to say? Regardless of whether your situation is bullying or if it's something else, how do you apply that to your particular life? How do you apply your workplace frustration and dissatisfaction in a way that is meaningful for you? What I'm saying is that you have to create your niche inside of the workplace. Now, you have to consider that there will always be some type of struggle that will exist inside of the workplace, but it matters how you shift your mindset in order to tackle those particular things. Now, there are certain things that we just can't control, and one of those things is our bosses and our co-workers, those pesky co-workers that we sometimes can't seem to get along with. But just as I eventually found my niche in coaching teams, you can also find your niche on the job. So that means you have to, after you carve that niche, devise a plan. What is that plan going to look like for you to be successful? And be audacious, meaning walking upright and speaking out towards the injustices that might happen inside of the workplace. Now, as you do that, I also encourage you to win on the job. That means you have to weather the storm and fight for what is right.